Welcome to the Half-Blood Report.
Here we discuss Percy Jackson news, interviews, and all things Riordan. I'm Samuel, your co-host.
And I'm Diego, your other co-host.
So, Diego, what were you doing Riordan related this week?
So, actually, Samuel, I don't think you might know about this, but I was actually attending Camp Half-Blood online, and I had a blast. Samuel, what were you doing this
Yeah.
week?
So basically, Diego and we both did Camp Half-Blood Austin online together this week. We did it together, so that's why Diego's being all like silly goosey, I guess, and saying that he doesn't know what I did and that I don't know what he did. Yes, we went to Camp Half-Blood Austin online, and actually later in the episode, if you haven't guessed this from the show notes or whatever, we're going to be talking about our experience at Camp Half-Blood Austin after we get through the Demigod news and all. So obviously, we had a blast, and we're going to talk more about that in that episode. But considering the fact that I did the same thing as Diego, and it'll be a bit boring to just say the same thing as Diego, I'm gonna say, that was the main Riordan thing I did. I got a book in the mail. It's actually Rick Riordan recommended this book all the way, like I think in April, when he originally announced the Irish mythology series. And he said that he recommended this book as a good way to get into Irish mythology, and it's called Mythical Irish Beasts. It's written and illustrated by Mark Joyce, and there's a link in the show notes to get it yourself. And basically, this book is just bunch of descriptions of different types of beasts in Irish mythology, and awesome illustrations of them. And so I'm just looking forward to sort of looking through this and guessing which ones are most likely to appear in a Rick Riordan book. And I think I also am already developing like a lot of my favorites. So I can't wait to tell you about tell you all about these Irish mythical beasts in a future episode. Which I know we've been hinting at an Irish mythology themed episode a lot, but don't worry, we're not just saying that. Like, it really is in our plan. Okay.
Yes, it's in our very elaborate plan. You see, we plan out
So,
every
yeah.
second of every minute of every day very elaborately.
Well, yeah, it's our mastermind to take over the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So don't worry, we're not just goofing around. Like, we really do have a plan to make they have to work into a global empire, and then we buy Disney
Yeah, exactly.
and Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and Amazon. Don't forget about Amazon. Anyways, let's jump into the Demigod news.
Yeah, first up, I don't know if this is still considered Demigod news, considering it happened before our episode that was published last Monday, but we didn't know about it when we recorded the episode that was published last Monday. But basically, Rick Riordan, of course, this is old news, of course, to all of you, almost old news to us. But basically, Rick Riordan, of course, was criticized a couple weeks ago about. Well, he's been criticized often, but basically, he was criticized about a lot about the representation in the books, specifically often about Piper McLean and Samira, and he wrote two articles, some would say defending himself about the way he used his representation. I personally wouldn't necessarily say that. The way I see these articles is that he's not really defending himself. He is to an extent, but he's more sort of just A, apologizing, but B, explaining his thought process around the potentially offensive things that made themselves into the books, and why he didn't think they would come off as offensive, even if they did to a lot of people in those specific groups and communities. And so, yeah, what did you think of these articles, Diego?
Well, I personally read both of them, and I personally thought that they were very well written. I'm not a member of either community, so I can't really speak to whether they were accurate or whether they felt like sufficient justification in a way, and also like explanation in another. But I personally felt as though as much as Rick tries to be as inclusive and as politically correct as possible, as a member of the white straight community, there is no way that he will get anything 100% correct. And I feel as though this is something that we shouldn't expect from him. We shouldn't expect somebody who doesn't know about these experiences firsthand to know enough to make these decisions. Obviously, the only way to have, I wouldn't say 100%, but to have a more accurate perspective is to read from authors of that community. So, whether it was the Muslim community for Samira or the Cherokee community for Piper, but always reading like books written by authors from that culture will obviously make the books a lot more accurate.
I'm gonna have to actually, I'm gonna have to slightly disagree with you here, Diego, because regardless of what you believe about whether or not they should get it right the first time, you should always, if an author ever gets anything wrong, especially when they're trying to represent a community that they're not part of, they should give 100% apology, which I think Rick Riordan does, a pretty solid job of here, which we can get into more detail of where he did give it a full apology. But what I'm saying is, I think that you should expect authors to get it 100% right. Not because they're going to. In fact, it's very unlikely that they are. But if an author is going to try to write a book that has good diversity and representation, I think they should be expected to show, accurate and non harmful representation because, basically you shouldn't be putting diversity in your books if it's not, if it's going to be harmful. And I don't think Rick Riordan intended it to be harmful, and I'm just saying an author needs to put the research in to get it as perfect as possible.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not because they're going to. If you're not part of that community, you are going to mess up. It's basically flat out there. But I think that having the expectation put upon them that they are going to get it 100% right should put the author in a place where they do all the research. And I think Rick Riordan did do as much research as he could. Did he get it wrong? Yes. Was it going to be likely that he was get it wrong? Yes. Should we have expected him to get it wrong? And here I don't think that is correct. I think that you have to put the expectations on an author
Yeah.
to get it 100% right if they're not like think about the book. Oh geez, I'm forgetting the title. American Dirt, American Soil, racist book. I forget the title. um of course there was a big sort of controversy about how that book portrayed really harmful stereotypes of Latinx, but particularly Mexicans coming to the United States. And there was this big controversy about like, should people who are not part of a community, specifically white people, be able to write about those communities? And my opinion has always been yes. As an author, you can write about whatever community, regardless of if you're part of it. What you cannot do as an author, what you should not do as an author, which should make sure you always do not do as an author, is portray harmful stereotypes and not do research. If you're writing a book about a community you're not part of, put in the research, which is very obvious that the author of American Dirt didn't do. Now, Rick Riordan, did he portray harmful stereotypes? I cannot say because I am not part of the communities that he portrayed. But a lot of people in those communities to say that yes, he did. So, you know, the, and there are also people in these communities who say no, he was actually pretty good. So I'm just saying, to some people, yes, he did actually do a pretty bad job, and to those he owes a full apology. And there's some people that he did a good job, and I'm really happy for those people to finally see diverse interpretations of themselves in a book. Now, I kind of lost my train of thought here, but I'm basically saying, as an author, you need to put in the research and not portray harmful
Yeah.
stereotypes.
I
Rick Riordan
definitely,
put in the research,
yeah.
and whether or not he portrayed harmful stereotypes is up for debate. But we're not going to debate exactly whether he portrayed harmful stereotypes because it's really not for us to say, not being members of the communities that he portrayed, specifically in these articles, Cherokee and Muslim.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page here. In that, yes, we should put on them the expectation that they will get it right, but we also should not expect that they are going to get it right. As you said it
What the
yourself,
hell
in
did you
that,
just say,
yes,
Diego?
No, 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 no. Like you said it yourself, and actually, it'd be cool if you could grab the sound bite of it. But you'd said something along the lines of,
I Diego, I'm
we should
sorry,
put
but
on,
you can say I
yeah.
was wrong, but I'm not gonna do that much editing just to prove I was wrong.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
may
Maybe,
have been.
you don't have to do that editing. I'm just saying, like, you said something along the lines of, we should put on them the expectation that they will get it 100% right, but the possibility that they will is zero, right? Which is what I was trying to say. I just think you said it a bit better than I did. Which is that we should put on them the expectation that they should get it right, so that they try as hard as possible to get it right. But we should also, like, it's kind of like when you cheer for a team but you know that the other team will win.
Oh, so basically every time I go watch a Mets game.
In that you think we should put on him the expectation to get it right, so that he puts in the research to get it right. He or she or they, we should not expect for them to get it right 100%, being not of that community.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I would definitely give these articles a read. I think he makes apologies throughout, and definitely if and I think he also stands firm in some places that he doesn't think it's necessarily a harmful stereotype, specifically in when in the discussion between Samira and Magnus on the phrase. Geez, I forget where is it Alu Akbar. Did I say that right? I have no idea if I said that right. If I did
Me
say it
neither.
right, please. If I did say right, please, send me a correct pronunciation because I'm always trying to learn. But basically, I think this is the part that a lot of people got really stuck on if they found it harmful because he says if you think Samira seems like a hurtful stereotype, all I can say is strongly disagree because basically his thoughts on the subject is that when Samira used the word, Magnus probably would have, you know, have only known that phrase from, news stories describing terrorist attacks, and then Sir Samira teaches Magnus something nice about her religion, and some people see that as a harmful stereotype. Using that phrase and having that discussion between Samira and Magnus. Some people in the Islam community see that as a harmful stereotype, and Rick Riordan, that is kind of one of, I think, might be the biggest fault of his articles that like he's like saying, yeah, I don't think this is a harmful stereotype. But I still think that his, apology about people who felt harmed by the characters of Samira and Piper, and also his disagreement that they necessarily are hurtful stereotypes, I think those can go hand in hand. I don't think he has to, say I did a terrible job writing the whole time. I think he can acknowledge when he believes he made mistakes and when he believes that he actually did a good job while still apologizing. I think those can coexist. And you don't have to accept that apology if you like still believe those are harmful stereotypes. I'm just saying he doesn't have to change his opinion on his own writing to also be, thoroughly upset if he hurt anyone, you know? Did I lose you, Diego?
No, no, no. I get what you mean. I'm I'm trying to process it as you say it.
Diego might be a genius, but his big brain takes a bit processing time. It's
Yeah,
like an old
exactly,
computer.
exactly. It's like a smart computer. Just it takes a bit to get the information out. But yeah, no, I definitely agree that that this is an issue that needs to be brought up in order for certain if somebody feels as though you did something wrong, you should probably try your best to either make a change or adjust accordingly, or at least make an apology. And I think that this is an issue that will continue to be talked about, regardless the author, whenever writing about a community different from theirs. And even when, if I, as a Latinx person, wrote a sci-fi fantasy book about people of Latinx heritage, I might still get things wrong. And that's just because no community has the same norms all across. Like, while I am personally like a very open person, I know that a lot of Latinx people believe like being gay is a sin. And I don't personally agree with them. And if I wrote a book, I would definitely not portray it as such, but they might be angry about that, right? So you're never going to get something 100% correctly, even as own voices. So I think apologizing is always good, and making changes in future editions to the extent that that is possible is also good. And I think that's that we should expect from everyone. But going back in time is simply not possible.
Yeah, and I have to say, at the end of the day, it is really cool that we can sit here on this podcast and talk about the apology Rick Riordan gave. We could be sitting in an alternate universe and we're talking about how Vic Riordan never even gave an apology to his hurtful stereotypes that he portrayed in his books, and how like Vic Riordan just chose to ignore the people in marginalized communities who's saying they portrayed harmful stereotypes. Right? We could be sitting in that universe, but instead we're sitting in the universe where Rick Riordan gave apologies. He wrote articles explaining what went wrong and what he tried to do right and how it might have not gone right, and apologizing, right? We're sitting in that universe where Rick Riordan has actually published this, and he could have just been like, no, screw it. I'm not going to do anything. I think I'm 100% right. So that's what I think is really cool. How, we live in a day and age where if a white, author, or really any author, screws up when they're writing about marginalized community, most of the time, I mean, they're still terrible person, JK, but most of the time they're like, yeah, I messed up. Here's my blog post explaining why I messed up and why I'm sorry. That's what I think is really cool about this that we have today.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that this is an evolving conversation.
Yeah. So next up on the Demigod news is we got a new piece of character art for Paola Santiago. As I mentioned last time, there was going to be a chupacabra puppy or dog, I guess, for Paola, and we got the character for it as well as the name, which is going to be Bruto. So on readwriting.com, link in the description, there's this article about Bruto and some cool character art for him. One thing that does really annoy me is that it says if you know anything about chupacabras, you know that these modern day legendary creatures do not have a reputation for being warm and cuddly. In fact, their names can be loosely translated from Spanish to mean goat sucker, and comes from the beast's reputation for attacking goats and sucking their blood. Diego, can you guess why that passage annoyed me a lot?
I don't know, maybe because you had like a ginormous rant on it and that was like not even close.
Well, okay, yes, I did do a lot of research on the chupacabra last week, but that's actually not why. One specific thing really annoyed me, and they said it loosely translated
Oh
from
no,
Spanish
wait,
to mean
yeah,
goat
no, that's
sucker.
the exact translation.
Yeah, that's okay. Technically, it means sucker goat. But like, if you want the real translation, it's goat sucker. It's not a loosely translated. It's like one notch away from being the direct translation.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
basically the direct translation. And the fact that they say like loosely translated, it's a minor detail, but it just made me really mad. So
That's kind of
yeah.
annoying. No, I understand why it would be annoying.
But character art, more importantly, we got the interpretation for how chupacabras are going to look in this book. As we kind of talked about last time, they're obviously going to be more like dogs since we're getting a puppy. This looked a lot less friendly than I imagined a pet for Paola would be. You know what I mean? I thought she was going to get like a cute chupacabra puppy, and this looks like a demon, which I know it should look more like a demon, but like I thought because it was going to be Paola's pet, it might be a bit cuter, but this is like it looks like it's about to like laser beam a bunch of people and kill them all and rip out and then suck their blood out, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it looks cool. I'm just annoyed that it's not cute. Like
Yeah, it literally says puppy, and that is a full blown dog right there.
so I don't know. There's probably a very good explanation for it when we read the book, but from the information this does not look like what I imagined a Chupacabra puppy. Unless this is actually a Chupacabra puppy and the full-grown Chupacabra is like basically just makes you wet your pants and die. It gives you a heart attack.
Is that what it says?
No, I'm just saying, like, if this is the puppy, imagine how scary the adult version must be.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, let's actually discuss kind of the main thing we're going to be talking about this episode. Diego, you want to, well, we kind of already mentioned it, but Diego, you want to give a sort of an introduction?
Yeah, so Samuel and I this week went to Camp Half-Life Austin online.
As we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, which is the online version of Camp Half-Life Austin, which is a branch of Camp Half-Life. And we had a really great time. And today on the podcast, we're going to be chatting a little bit about our experiences at Camp Half-Blood and kind of the overarching idea of the entire week and how we felt, some pros and some cons, and just like our Camp Half-Blood review. And yeah, we're just kind of gonna go over how the week went and what we did.
Yes, but first up, we really have to give a big thank you to Topher and Isaiah. They're sort of the two brains behind the whole camp operation. You know, we had Topher on the podcast, of course, and we had no idea if we were going to go to Camp Half Blood. And then I thought I'd signed up, but I hadn't signed up. And then Diego hadn't signed up. And then we actually ended up signing up the day before camp started. And Topher and Isaiah were so gracious and were really able to make everything work well for us, even though we'd signed up a lot later than most of their attendees.
Yeah, so we're just super glad that like the experience was able to be so seamless, even though it was kind of our fault that we were late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. So, thanks again to Topher and Isaiah. Let's kind of talk about the stuff that we got like mailed to us. So when you sign up for Camp Half Blood Austin, you're automatically getting a bunch of super cool swaggy stuff.
Yeah, you get a Camp Half Blood tee. You can either get the Camp Half Blood version, or I think they also have a Camp Jupiter, a Hotel Valhalla. They have a lot of options for whichever T-shirt you wanted. Since I personally don't have a Camp Half Blood T-shirt, I got the nice orange classic Camp Half Blood T-shirt, and it was pretty amazing. Also in the bag, you get arts and crafts supplies for arts and craft activities that you'll be doing during the week. So each week it'll be a different set of things. So this week we got some string for friendship bracelets. We got some like heavy rope to make. I think it was to practice knots. And then we got this kind of palette right here. It was. I think it's a watercolor palette. In order to paint the camp beads that you are given. So you get kind of like this whole arts and crafts experience inside the box. Along with the box, you get at least for us right now it's Camp Jupiter, but you get a recent Rick Riordan book. So I think at some point it probably would have been the Tyrant's Tomb or the Demigod Files. When we went,
But
it
this year
was
they were giving copies of Camp Jupiter Classified. We both got a new copy of Camp Jupiter Classified. So that's super cool. I still got to decide what I'm going to do with mine because it's like an extra. I might just give it to like my sister or a friend. Yeah, but I don't know.
or we might do a giveaway.
Maybe.
Perhaps. Perhaps we might sign it ourselves and do a giveaway. Not sure what the signature would add to it, but it would be very cool.
Yeah. Anyways, did you mention the swords, Diego? The sword
No, I think I forgot to mention the swords. Inside the box, I'm actually currently holding it right now. You get one sword making kit. And in that sword making kit, you get one, I think it's about like 2 feet, 2 foot, yeah. It's like a 2 foot long PVC pipe, right? And to go with this PVC pipe, you get one long piece of foam, you get one slightly shorter piece of foam, and then you get one teeny tiny piece of foam. So what you do is you attach the long piece of foam to one end, right, you kind of slip it over the PVC pipe. You attach the medium end on the other, and with that you have the blade of the sword and the hilt of the sword, like the pommel, right? So that's pretty sweet because what happens is that I personally like this sword design a lot because it's
Diego,
not wobbly.
Diego, you could have stopped at they give you stuff to make your own foam sword
No,
for
no, no. But
that.
I have something to say about this. I actually really love the design because with most like foam swords or kind of like don't get hurt swords, they're so flimsy. Like the plastic will be flimsy, the foam will be flimsy, and it's just not fun to play with. The PVC pipe makes it perfectly sturdy, so it does not. There's no flimsiness to it at all. And the foam around the blade of it makes it so that it doesn't hurt, but you can still hit like hard with it, and it's not some like flimsy piece of garbage. So personally, I want to say that I was very satisfied with my sword.
However long and boring you thought that description of the Camp Half Blood Austin swords were, I edited out about 70% of it. But to summarize, the Camp Half Blood Austin swords, they give you foam and PVC pipes to make your own, and it's really good quality, as Diego has summarized. Or not really summarized because he went on a really long rant. Anyways, um, you also get a bunch of cool swag based on what cabin you chose to be on. So I chose to be on the Demeter cabin. I got like a green handkerchief with the Camp Half Blood logo, the green representing Demeter's cabin. I also got a pen that has like a flower on it, not a real flower, like a fake flower, but it still looks sort of like flowery, which is nice. I also got some seeds. I love seeds. I love gardening, and I got some tomato seeds and some radish seeds, and that was super cool. And lastly, I also got a letter from my godly parent, and we also got a letter from Frank Zhang. And I had the idea of reading these whole letters on the podcast, but I just realized how long these are, and I don't want to have to do that much reading, like
Yeah,
from a.
and it's also it's a surprise. Like it's cool letters, and I feel like it'd be kind of ruining the experience if we read them to you.
Yeah, but basically, you get a letter from Feng Xiang talking about the summer, and you also get a cool letter from Demeter. And I just want to say
Well, your
specifically
godly parent.
oh yeah, I got a letter from Demeter because I chose to be a child of Demeter. I assume Diego got it with Fina, but yeah, from your godly parent. But I will say, I think that this letter from Frank Zhang perfectly captured the character and also just Rick Riordan's humor. And I just want to say a lot of the stuff we'll get into it more, but I think the Camp Half Blood Austin, our experience, I think it really captured just the sort of spirit of Rick Riordan's books.
Yeah, and it we'll get more into that as we go along. But yeah, to summarize, in your package, you get sword making supplies, some a camp tea, some cool cabin swag, and a bunch of arts and crafts supplies.
Yeah, you want to go go over the schedule like of the day at Camp Half Blood?
Yeah, so I'll just give a quick overview of our day. So we start off in the kind of main Zoom room, and we kind of start with some introductions and well, the first day we started with some introductions and kind of what was going on. And every day after that, it's kind of just a little bit of an intro moment where you can chat with some people before camp starts. And then Topher will usually give an overview of what's happening in the plot of the kind of camp at that point in time. And he'll kind of just talk and chat. And it'll be pretty fun and laid back. And then from there, you get moved into your breakout room with your cohort. So your cohort, normally I believe it's cabins, but for the online it was cohorts. And your cohort is the people who you're going to be spending most of your time at camp with. So we all kind of introduced ourselves the first day, and every day after that, cohort time is kind of just a time to look at the schedule of the day, do maybe a couple of fun games, and chat with the people in your cohort about things going on in your life or in the story. After that, there's a little bit of a short break, and then you jump into your first activity. So the activities change every day, but just to give you a little bit of insight into them, there's an activity called fight training, and in fight training, what you do is you kind of the coach Kat teaches you. She's an awesome person, by the way. She teaches you like some like basic martial arts, and so and you kind of shadow spar with people on the other side, and kind of just like punch at some things and learn some cool kicks and such. Another of the activities is arts and crafts, and arts and crafts is pretty self-explanatory. You kind of just there's an arts and crafts for the day, and you kind of go along with that and really teach you how to make some cool stuff. So I know, I made some cool arts and crafts over the course of the week, and Samuel probably did too. There are, of course, breaks in between almost every activity. One of the other activities that you have is sword training, and in sword training, also pretty self-explanatory, but you receive this sword that comes in your Hermes air box, which we already talked about, obviously. But yeah, so Master Demon, who teaches sword training, will teach you how to use your sword, teach you some cool combos, work on some footwork, some defense. Of course, it's not as great as the real thing where you would actually be sparring against some people, but you still have a wicked fun time. And kind of, well, a couple other activities. One of them is poetry, in which you kind of free write and write some poetry inspired by demigod activities. And then there is Monster Stomp, and Monster Stomp is kind of you just learn about the different kinds of monsters and what they are. And this is actually one of my favorite activities because since Samuel and I, this is our first time with the Camp Applet Austin branch, we didn't really know a lot about monster lore specific to the camp. So that was really interesting to see the wide variety of villains and monsters. But yeah, those are kind of like the side activities that you have during the day. So you'll start off with a Topher Talk, go into your cohort, go through your first activity, whichever one of the activities it may be. Then you kind of have a lunch break, and lunch is really fun. You can have lunch kind of on your own and kind of detox from the screen, or you can have lunch with the rest of the people, and that's where like a lot of really cool conversations that we had all week. So I personally had a blast during lunch. After that, you come to the main part of the day, which is your side quest. And the side quest you get to choose from a variety of different activities that changes every day. But some of the kind of constants are quest, which is the main kind of side quest. Mythomagic, which is this the fun card game from the books, and I actually tried that out, and it was a ton of fun.
Oh yeah, Mytho Magic was a ton of fun. I'm a big role player fan. I play Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, speaking of which, we're recording this before it happens, but I'm super excited because later today, Saturday, there's gonna be a D&D game. I know we talked about it last week, but I'm just like, anyway, speaking of role playing, I'm just looking forward to that. It's already gonna have happened by the time this episode comes out because it's happening later today. But yeah, so I'm a big role playing fan, and I liked Mytho Magic. It was fun to play. Though I do have one criticism of Mytho Magic. Okay, it's a
Hit
cool
it.
game, great way to make immerse yourself in the monster world. But the Mytho Magic in the Percy Jackson books that Nico plays is like playing with the creatures from Greek mythology, and like you play as like you have like a team of monsters or gods, whatever. And the Mytho Magic that we played is where you sort of immerse yourself in the world of Percy Jackson and you play as a demigod or whatever, right? So I'm not taking anything away from Mytho Magic being very, very cool. I'm just saying its name in reference to the game Nico played in Percy Jackson is a little bit misleading, okay?
Yeah, and there's no like 3,000 tack points or anything. Obviously, it's
Yeah,
something. It's something that's more like D&D based as opposed to like Pokemon card game, which I feel like it was in the books. Correct me if I'm wrong, though.
I don't know because it had figurines, but it also had trading cards.
Yeah,
So I don't. I think Rick just basically combined all the games he like had heard about into like a game that sounded cool based on Greek mythology.
yeah, exactly.
Also another one of the side quest things is trivia, which is really fun. It is kind of Greek mythology trivia, with the exception of once you find the trivia item you know that once the trivia item has been guessed, um everyone has to find an item in their sort of house as fast as possible that relates to the item. And if say you don't pick up a correct item, you have to make a connection as to how it would relate to the actual thing that I was talking about. Like I think one thing that happened was the trivia answer was Vulcan, and then I picked up my sunglasses, and I was like, sunglasses protect your eyes from heat, from sunlight, and sunlight is heat, and volcanoes are also hot, and Vulcan is the god of volcanoes. And then I was like, yeah, that's a connection. And so I thought that was a fun game because it was you could stretch it as far as you want, and it was like, so it wasn't like you were playing for anything. It was just a fun thing to see if you could find an item relating to the trivia, or just make a connection between what item and something else. And of course, the trivia, as always, doing Greek mythology trivia as a huge Percy Jackson nerd is fun, especially when you're playing against other Percy Jackson nerds. And also Diego played, and he also made some crazy connections.
Yeah, trivia was a bunch of fun. I think I made some pretty abstract connections, but they checked out in the end. So yeah, that was a ton of fun. There was songwriting and music games, which throughout the week they kind of worked on different musical songs. And on Friday we got like a snapshot of what they've been working on all week. And let me just say that there are some very musically talented people at camp, and that was a ton of fun to watch the end result. There was also a Minecraft server, and that's again pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, so then there was a couple of other ones, but those are the main ones that kind of rotated off and on. So those are kind of the main section of the day. I personally did not get to try a lot of them. I only really did Quest, Mythomagic, and the last day I tried Monster Talk, which was kind of like Monster Stomp because I wanted to learn more about the lore. For those of you guys who don't know, 15 years of camp lore translates into a lot of very, very cool stories. And after that, you get two more activities, whichever they may be, they kind of rotate, and you get to the end of the day at camp. So you have some cohort circle time in which you kind of reunite with your cohort, talk about what you did that day, talk about whatever you want to talk about, and kind of unpack what happened. And at the end is the camp wrap up, known as Topher Talk, in which Topher kind of just summarizes what happened in Quest, which we will get into a little bit later. What happened during the quest, and he kind of summarizes what ideas he has and what has changed in the ever evolving story. And then everybody says goodbye, and we go off into the sunset.
I didn't go off into the sunset. I stayed inside my house
Yeah, yeah,
to be
same
safe.
here. But now we'll get to kind of the main part of camp and the main part of Camp Half-Blood Austin online, which is Quest. So Samuel, do you want to give a little bit of an explanation of what Quest is?
Yeah, and you know what? I am gonna say this. This is not our first time recording this section on the podcast. We tried to do it before, and we recorded like 40 minutes, and then Diego was like, "No," and so then we basically are re-recording it. But the first time we did this, Diego basically just stole my description from when I originally described Quest to him, and he was like, "Yeah, that's the way I described it." And I actually had to play him a clip from episode 39 of me describing it the same way.
Yeah,
But
it was very embarrassing.
yeah. Anyways, the way I would describe it, and the way Diego would describe it, plagiarizing me, and the way I described it in episode 39, is that it's kind of like watching a movie, except you get to, tell the characters in the movie what to do and when to do it. Like, so you're not bossing them around necessarily, but you're like kind of the voice in the ear giving suggestions along with, like 30 of her campers. And it's fun because you can kind of watch the journey, and you still feel like you have personal stake in it, because if you gave a bad suggestion, that means that this person might die from a monster, and that would be on you. and it's just a lot of fun, I have to say. It really does immerse you. I know it said it feels like you're watching a movie, which can kind of sort of make it sound like it's being taken you out of, but it does really make you feel like you're part of the story, because there's someone, holding a Zoom phone, a phone on a Zoom call. Geez, I sound like a boomer. Yeah, but it really, I don't know, it really just makes you feel like you're part of the story.
Yeah,
Someone's carrying
definitely.
around the Zoom.
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
the way when you think about it, you shouldn't. It doesn't feel immersive, but when you kind of you get really into it, and I think I'm gonna give an example just so you guys like understand, because I feel like I've talked about my sister a bit on this podcast, um, and I think the
No,
only thing
not
I've
really. He barely ever has.
Oh, I barely ever have. Okay, I feel like you talk about your sisters more than I do. But yeah,
That
so
is
my
correct.
sister has read exactly one Riordan verse book that she's liked, and that has been the first and second Magnus Chase books, and she really liked them.
Wait, how is that exactly one? You just said first and second.
Okay, okay, well, two books she's read. She didn't finish the second one though, but she's read the first and half of the second book, and she absolutely loved both of the books. No, I think she read all of the second one. Yeah, but she really liked both of the books, and it's the only thing she knows about the Riordanverse and the only thing she cares about in the Riordanverse. Because I will try to get her to kind of talk to me about things or kind of think out theories with me, and she just refuses to read any of the Percy Jackson books, any of the other like side books. She just refuses to read all of it. And she despises with like heated passion this podcast as a whole, and that is not because she might not like it. um it's just because I do it, and if you've ever had a sibling you know that siblings are like just constantly fighting, right? So she just hates everything Riordanverse related except for Magnus Chase, and that's the only thing she's willing to admit that she likes. So when I kind of started camp, she was like, "Diego, ew, go away, go like do your camp somewhere else. I don't want to hear anything about those stupid Percy Jackson books, right?" And the third day, she hears me like screaming because we just got jump scared during quest, and she walks down the stairs. She kind of like pops her head out the hallway and she goes, "Diego, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm on quest, Sophie. Do you want to come see? It's really cool. It's like," and I describe it exactly as Samuel just has. She kind of comes over and she sits down next to me, and for the next three quests, she was just sitting next to me the entire time, just stuck to the screen. And this from the second quest started, she was there, and the second quest ended, she was like, "Ew, Diego, I can't believe you're doing Percy Jackson things," and she would just go away and pretend nothing had happened. Um, and I personally have never seen my sister like anything, anything Percy Jackson related. So it's actually really cool that she enjoyed
There was a lot to process there, and I don't know what to be more annoyed at or whom to be most annoyed at.
it. No, it's I don't know. Siblings
Like,
are
like,
interesting.
like your sister, just for being so bully, and then you for being nice to your sister, and also for plagiarizing my description multiple times behind my back, and then, thinking it was your description.
I think Samuel's gonna be angry about this one for a while. But no, it was super fun. And I'll kind of give an overview of what happened. So, every single quest, or every single week, there's kind of like a mini plot, and it fits into the plot of the summer. And this has been happening for 15 summers. So there's a lot of story, and it's kind of like its own universe in a way where like you could have read every single Percy Jackson related thing that Rick Riordan has ever published, and you still would be in a completely
well, not completely, but in a relatively unknown situation, right? Which is kind of what happened to us. We really weren't sure what's going on because the camp has so much lore that is camp specific, right? So the week that we went, which was week 7, the plot was the first day on Monday. Within the first 15 minutes of camp, Mr. D is kidnapped by the bad guy of, I believe, the summer, Pontifex, and he is this very scary looking. He kind of looks like the yellow hat man from Curious George, but he's got like sunken eyes, rows and rows and rows of teeth in this really creepy smile, and he speaks in this like evil southern accent, right? So he kidnaps Mr. D. And the kind of point of the rest of the week is to save Mr. D from being kidnapped by this villain named Pontifex, right? So we get a tip from Mr. D's alternate form, Bacchus, and he kind of lets us know what we have to do. And that is collect items sacred to Dionysus in order to free him, to make him powerful enough to be able to free himself, right? So throughout the week, we go on these missions to find these items, and we encounter all sorts of monsters and bad guys, including Smileys, Pontifex himself, the Mayan god of the dead, Akpuch, and even and even like these scary fish people. So it was really fun. Kind of trying to we deactivated a bomb. We hid in a church kitchen. We fought off monsters in an auditorium. It was really like all over the place.
Can I just say one thing that I especially noticed when Diego was telling that story that I thought was really fascinating is how Diego used the word we a lot. And even though he was on a Zoom call and he wasn't the one running around and fighting Pontifex, that is just how immersive the experience is, even for a Zoom call at Camp Half Blood Austin. That like Diego is using the word we when he's just being carried around on a phone the whole time for like an adventure that he didn't read on a page. He feels he lived, which might just mean he's a crazy person, or it might mean Camp Half Blood Austin is really really awesome. You decide. It might actually be both.
A little bit of both.
And at the end of the week, we retrieved the 4 items sacred to Dionysus, and we began to free him, right? And we succeeded in freeing Dionysus, but unfortunately, Pontifex, using Dionysus's power and the power of Pooch, the Mayan god of the dead, was able to revive Commodus from the dead. So Commodus appeared for a brief instant, and right after he kind of was starting the showdown against the demigods, Pooch came in and kind of possessed Commodus and turned him into one of his undead slaves. And the undead slave Commodus chased Pontifex out of the auditorium, and Pooch kind of turns to us, and and at that moment, the demigod counselors just bolt out of there. So we succeeded in doing one thing, which was kind of freeing Dionysus from the capture of Pontifex. But unfortunately, when doing this, we did not succeed in preventing Pontifex from reviving Commodus.
That sounds like really happy, Diego. It's like fun at camp and you're adventuring, and then you're like, unfortunately, we did not succeed in, in stopping a pooch. And also, can I just say the plot made a lot more sense before we tried to describe it to you. So yeah,
Yeah,
there like it wasn't like Apuch randomly showed up. Like there was like build up and stuff to that. Like he appeared in the previous quests and he was like set up, and he was like, "You're gonna have to owe me a favor because I do this for you." And then he comes in and like when it made a lot more sense. And there was like singing in Hamilton that was totally related to Percy Jackson. And
Yeah, it was a pretty wild ride, but we just wanted to give you guys a quick summary of what happened. Yeah, so basically that was a ton of fun, kind of figuring everything out, and the special effects used on the quest were absolutely wild. There was this moment in kind of like this place named the Cathedral of Junk, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's actually super cool, but it's kind of like this massive space constructed out of junk, like old toy cars and glass bottles and just all random stuff, right? So there was a moment there when Al Pooch kind of appeared. We look into the mirror, into one of the trash mirrors, and Al Pooch is behind us, right? And the demigod, I believe there was three demigods throughout the week, and it was Hector, TK, and Kato, and they were kind of the main characters of this plot. And TK kind of turns around to face the camera at Apuch, and he's not there. And he turns back into the mirror, and Apuch is there. And it was a super crazy illusion because Apuch was only in the mirror. He wasn't behind us or like anywhere else. He only appeared in the mirror. And he kind of gave us some magical items, right? And then when we kind of looked down at where he placed the items were really there. They weren't just like a reflection. So that was super wild.
yeah, that was really wild. No, I have to say, for a phone going around, on a Zoom call, sometimes the connectivity was bad and it would be like blurry and they would have to disconnect and reconnect. But overall, it looked like really professional. This was like some Blair Witch Project stuff. Like, looks unprofessional, but at the same time, you can tell it's really kind of professional. And then they is especially that pooch thing.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to say something before we move on from this kind of talking point that I am beyond excited to think about going to Camp Half Blood in person next year or the year after that because it was super duper immersive on a Zoom call. I can only
For
imagine
real.
how much cooler it would be in person. Um,
Yeah,
and
I can't
everything was
conceive.
just so well done, and there was like there was no like gaps in it, and like right now we're talking about it in a more professional sense.
Are we?
Yeah, like we're talking about it as if it weren't as if it weren't like the real deal. But during the camp week, it was so easy to just kind of slip into believing that everything that was going on was absolutely 100% genuine.
Diego's a crazy person.
There is a little bit of crazy involved, but it
No, no,
was
but okay, I'm not gonna say that I decided to believe it was all, a true thing, or I tricked myself into believing that it was happening. But I will say it definitely was fun to sort of imagine that it maybe not happen in the real world, but it was so fun because it felt that you could be engaging in a story that's happening in the world of Percy Jackson. This felt something that could coincide right along, like, maybe be like a short story that takes place during the trials of Apollo. It felt like, a story from the Demigod Diaries, and that was what was so great about to me. It felt like something that's part of the larger Riordanverse pantheon that then you, or I, when I was there, get to be a part of, and I thought that was really cool about it.
yeah, definitely. And I think that's kind of the bulk of what we wanted to say. But I just want to say that aside from the camp actually being pretty interesting, the people there it was really a family. And I know people like to say that a lot about like camps or kind of like communities of certain people, but it really was. I know Samuel
You were
wasn't there.
related to them?
No, no, no.
They adopted you?
No, 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 no. Samuel, shh.
You married them? Legally binding?
No. Shh. Samuel, let me say what I wanted to say. I know
Okay.
Samuel wasn't there during the lunch periods. But everybody there was just so inclusive and understanding, and it felt like a safe space. Like personally for me, I don't experience a lot of like harassment or judging, as I am Latinx, but I live in New York, so that doesn't really it doesn't really like affect me as much, and I don't really experience like much discrimination, if any at all. But it felt so welcoming, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword because since it's so tight knit, it you kind of felt like an outsider. At least I know for me, the first couple days I was kind of just trying to like understand everything that's going on. But the community itself is just everybody there is so welcoming that you can just become part of it in the 1 week that we were there. It really felt like everybody there was a friend. And I think that's really one of the strengths and why this camp can continue being a summer camp online. And it's not because the actual everything was fun, but of course it's not as fun as going to an actual camp. And the quests were kind of the highlight. But some of the other things were like not as cool as they would have been in person. Like obviously sword training is fun, but sword fighting is a lot more fun. But the community and 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 the people who go there, their friendship is just so strong that you that that it's less like a less like a summer camp and more just like a space to interact with people who are like-minded and inclusive.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I was obviously joking before earlier. But yeah, no, it does really feel like a family. And when I know that's said that word can be thrown around about a lot of spaces, but that there's just so much in the Camp Half Blood Austin community. I actually want to have Topher back on the show because there are so many like inside things from like the camp lore, that like about the smileys and stuff that I want to, that's like the inside jokes that we just need to have Topher to explain to us like everything about Camp Half Blood Austin family now. I'm just saying, because I'd been to the Camp Half Blood Brooklyn location though, and I kind of knew what it was like to go on a quest. Maybe not exactly the same way they would have done it at Austin, but I kind of knew some general things. And I went in, I wanted to know how they were doing Camp Half Blood online. I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was so interesting that we even had Topher on the podcast before to talk about their transition to online. What I did not expect is to, want to actually learn more about Camp Half Blood. I didn't Austin. I didn't expect to, find this great family that I'm suddenly a part of, and I, definitely didn't expect to, really, really want to go there. Um, whenever we can do it, however many years it will be that this is over. But yeah, go start going to Camp Affleck in person. Obviously, it's hard for us because we live like states away, but I just think that would be super cool to do, and I I went wanting to learn something about how Camp Half Blood Austin is, you know, adapting these times, but but now I want to learn a lot more about how Camp Half Blood Austin works, without Zoom, because as Diego, has just said, I'm going to give credit to him instead of plagiarizing. It really is so crazy how they were able to make such an immersive experience on a Zoom call. I just having having being a physical location, grass. Haven't seen that in a while. That would just be so crazy.
Yeah. And with that, we're kind of reaching the end of the episode. But I just want to thank Topher and Ajay again, and all of our counselors, and activities directors, and the campers that went with us and allowed us to kind of be a part of this, even for a brief moment of time. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna
that's it.
restate what Diego said.
Yeah,
Huge thank you to Topher and Isaiah. We're so grateful that they were able to get us camp, quickly without when we didn't sign up weeks ahead of time like we were supposed to. Thanks to our
yeah.
counselors, thanks to all the activities directors and CITs. Thanks to all the campers we encountered, especially thanks to the ones in our cohort. And we did kind of make fun of Diego a lot. They did do that. That was kind of mean. Uh,
No,
everyone kind of makes fun of Diego though, so I feel like it's okay. And I'm still,
it is okay. It's totally okay.
yeah.
That
Did
that
Diego
is me.
deserve it? I mean, yeah, a little bit. He did deserve it.
If you meet me and do not make fun of me, you have not met me.
Like 10 minutes ago, Diego was sitting here talking about how he doesn't face discrimination in New York City.
Well, it's not discrimination. It's just I
Bullying,
don't know.
just bullying.
I no. I have a lot of fun being a funny person, and I actually enjoy other people laughing rather than me laughing, and don't mind being um the butt of a joke to hear somebody else laugh. But before this
Diego, Diego,
becomes
Diego,
a
Diego,
psychological
Diego,
thing, yeah.
you're not a genius, and you're crazy for thinking so.
Well, that's not very nice.
Well, you said that you would rather be the butt of a joke, so I decided.
Okay, well, before this becomes an analysis of my personality and life choices, I would like to say that that's it for this episode of the Half Blood Report. Samuel, how can I contact this podcast?
You can follow the show on Twitter at Half Report. You can also find us on Instagram at The Half Blood Report or email the show at thehalfbloodreport@gmail.com. We also have a website, thehalfbloodreport.com, and we also have a Teespring. Currently we just have our logo t-shirts, some inverted logo t-shirts. Diego, what's the Teespring link?
I don't actually know the Teespring link off the top of my head, so if you'll give me a second to look it
Yeah,
up.
Diego doesn't know the Teespring link, so we're just going to put it in the description.
That said, it's time for credits. Our theme music is actually by me.
I do our editing. My co-host here is Diego, and I'm Samuel.
This is the Half Blood Report podcast, the only HBR that matters. We'll see you next week.